Exercise 20-19, we're going to prepare a production cost report for the first process of a two-process company. So ceramic painting prepares and packages paint products. Ceramic painting has two departments, blending and packaging. Direct materials are added at the beginning of the blending process, and these direct materials are dyes. And at the end of the packaging process, cans. So remember, in this problem, we're only doing the blending department. So we're only working with the very first process. So going back to our slides, remember when we had Peggy's puzzles, and they had two work-in-process inventory accounts. And so we are doing the very first process. And since this is the very first process, there can be no units transferred in from a previous process because there is no previous process. There is raw materials, but that's not a process. So continuing, conversion costs are added evenly throughout the process. Data for the month of May for the blending department are as follows. So here's our data. Notice the data is split up into units, which is gallons. And then we've got our costs. So the first part of the production cost report are the units. So we're only worrying about units. So we don't have to worry about these costs for now. So let's go back to reviewing what this term units to account for means and what units accounted for means. So going back to our slides, units to account for are right here in blue. They're the beginning balance and then the units that are started. So that means label-wise, our labels are going to be beginning work in process. These are our beginning units. And then the units that were started in production. Okay, so that is units to account for. Now we have to do units accounted for. So units accounted for are just the units that are leaving the process because they're finished, and the units that were remaining in the process because they were unfinished. So the labels for this are going to be the units completed and transferred out, and the units that are still in ending work in process. Okay, now we got our units, or the labels done. Now we can go to the actual units that are involved. So our beginning, so this is beginning work in process. So we're talking about beginning work in process. We had 0 gallons. Now we need the number of gallons started in production, and that is $9,500, or excuse me, 9,500 gallons. So that gives us a total of 9,500 gallons. Now we need to know how many of those 9,500 gallons were completed and transferred out. So that is 6,000. And so if we had 9,500 to account for and 6,000 were completed, that means the balance, 3,500, were left unfinished. And that means they are in the ending work in process. And of course, our numbers bear that out. Over here, we've got 3,500 gallons. So this 3,500, you can either calculate or you can just get from here. All right, so that gives us our total units accounted for, 9,500. Now it's important that this number and this number has to be the same, and that makes sense. Because numerically, the units here have to be split between the ones that are finished and the ones that are left in balance. So notice this has 10,000 units here, and this has 8,000 plus 2,000 is 10,000. So to account for and accounted for has to be the same number. All right, now we're going to do equivalent units. So let's start with the units that are completed and transferred out. So of these 6,000 units, what percentage of them had the direct materials attached to them? Well, since these units were completed, that means all of them are completely done. So we've got 6,000 equivalent units for direct materials, and we also have 6,000 for conversion costs. So whenever we're talking about these completed units, the equivalent units are always the same as the whole units. So now let's go down to the ending work in process. So we're talking about these units that are still in the process at the end of the period that are unfinished. And in this case, we got 3,500 of them. So now we got to figure out, of these 3,500 unfinished units, notice this ending work in process, they are 30% of the way through the blending process. So technically, these 3,500 units are 30% complete. So now we have to figure out what percentage of them have the direct materials attached to them. Well, up here it says the direct materials are added at the beginning of the process. So any unit that was started already has all the direct materials costs attached to it, which are the dies. So since they've all been started and direct materials have been added at the beginning of the process, then 100% of them have the direct materials costs. Now we can go to the conversion costs. So conversion costs, this is the other key, are added evenly throughout the process. That means these units are 30% complete. That means they have 30% of the conversion costs added to them already. So the equivalent number of units is going to be 3,500 units, which we get from here, times this 30%, since they're 30% complete, which is 0.3, gives us 1050. So this 1050 means that 3,500 units that are 30% complete is the equivalent of 1,050 units being 100% complete. And then for the total units to count for, we just add these two numbers. You get 9,500, 7,050. So this is part one of this problem. We will continue this problem in another video.